We have a really interesting Raptors coaching update as it turns out the team has interviewed Steve Nash to be the team's next head coach. So we'll break that down, including a report that indicates Masai Fumbling might be fumbling some of the trade negotiations with the Portland Trailblazers and that Nick Nurse might end up becoming the next head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. So lots of stuff to break down. Without further ado, let's jump to the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is the Raptors interviewing Steve Nash to be the team's next head coach. And this one shocked a lot of Toronto Raptors fans. Maybe 5 years ago, a lot of people would be hyped, saying, oh, Canadian legend, right, Hall of Famer coming in to be the team's potential next head coach. That's hype. But after his disappointing run with the Brooklyn Nets, not a lot of Raptor fans are excited. And, we got the Woj bomb yesterday, the news that came out, and basically said that the Toronto Raptors with Steve had met with Steve Nash to discuss their head coaching job. Sources tell ESPN and Joe Vardoon. Nash and team is a Canada basketball legend. He had a 58% win record with the Brooklyn Nets, 94-67, and his 2+ seasons down there coaching in Brooklyn. Toronto's had a wide-ranging coaching search. So, Woj is coming out. The Toronto Raptors indicating the Raptors have had a meeting with Steve Nash, interviewed him, saw his feel in terms of his job, and the Raptors, as Woj said, have interviewed pretty well everybody across the NBA that's been associated in NBA circles, associated in WNBA circles, right? The likes of JJ Redick, Charles Lee, right? Our assistant coaches, Adrian Griffin, Earl Watson, some former Raptors guys, Mutombo Stackhouse, Becky Hammond on the Vegas Aces. We've talked to pretty well everyone. And Steve Nash, for the legend he is as a basketball player, his coaching reputation has soured so much with the Brooklyn Nets. It's, this might be the guy I've seen a lot of the most flack being thrown the Toronto Raptors way for even thinking about interviewing, because even though he's a basketball genius out there on the court, he can facilitate, he can pass, all that sort of stuff, didn't do much as a coach down there at the Brooklyn Nets. Had Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, but I won't count Ben Simmons, but all-star players right through that mix. And while they dealt with injuries, while they dealt with off-the-court drama, while they dealt with trade requests, they couldn't really put everything together. Now, maybe they could have. The year Kyrie Irving ended up going down, James Harden was playing on one leg. They were up 2-0 against the championship-winning Milwaukee Bucks team. So some point to that, say, hey, things would have worked out. But Nash was down there to sort of massage the egos, right? Sure, maybe from his basketball days, you'd expect him to know some of the X's and O's, but they had Ime Udoka brought on to staff. Their first year, they had Mike D'Antoni down there on the bench with Steve Nash to sort of do more of the traditional coaching sort of things. And then Nash was sort of there to say, hey, we got Kevin Durant on this team, we got Kyrie. We need to make sure everything runs smoothly, you guys are happy. But he just didn't have the ability to rein those guys in, to command the respect in the locker room to the point where, the team actually functioned. He even said himself, he lost the locker room. It was a mutual parting ways to the Brooklyn Nets, and that's how things ended there with the Brooklyn Nets. So Steve Nash, it's tough to really gauge his ability as a head coach during that weird, tumultuous situation where it felt like Kyrie, Kevin Durant were basically saying, hey, we don't really have a head coach. We just have a brain collective. Everything's going on. So I don't want to write off Steve Nash's coaching abilities immediately, but if we're going to fire Nick Nurse, who I know a lot of Toronto Raptors fans weren't happy with by the end of his tenure, and it seemed for good reason. It seemed relationships have frayed a little bit with him and the team, and wasn't happy with the direction of the front office. All that sort of stuff. We covered this on multiple videos. Nick Nurse is one of the best head coaches in the NBA. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He took our team to a championship. The season after, without Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, really we're Game 7. We're a Fred VanVleet step back, not getting blocked, to probably making the finals that season in the bubble, right? He took that team, exceeded all expectations. Tampa year is kind of a write-off. The year after that, the Toronto Raptors, with pretty well the same Tampa tank season, bringing in Scotty Barnes, who was pegged as being not a development project, got the most out of him, took us to the playoffs last season. I think Nick Nurse's masterclass, in not the most recent year, but the year prior, right, is getting understated by Toronto Raptors fans. This year was obviously a disappointment, but Nick Nurse was an amazing basketball coach. And if you're firing him, you need to be bringing in a guy that you don't have question marks about, or the interviews, they blow you away. The evaluation of them as a coach has to be top tier, top level in terms of what you're doing. And I feel like the value Steve Nash could provide is sort of, being that superstar manager doing this. I'm not sure what he's going to be able to do, in terms of developing talent, where the Toronto Raptors are at this point. So I'm not that intrigued for us bringing in Steve Nash, even if I'm not going to bag on him as a trash head coach. Like, I'm sure people have already had done it in the comment section down below. But let me know what you guys think about the Raptors potentially bringing in Steve Nash. The next thing we're taking a look at is Masai Ujiri potentially fumbling the Blazers trade negotiations. Now, we broke down a video yesterday about potential trade packages that rumored have been brought up with the Portland Trailblazers. Reports have indicated that the Blazers, they want to make some moves, they want to improve that team, they want to get some wing talent, and they might be able to trade away that number 3 overall pick to make that happen, right? We want to see the full breakdown in terms of what the Blazers are doing, the talks. Check out that video. And those reports also indicate the Raptors are one of the only teams out there on the open market that are intrigued by giving away solid assets in order to bring draft capital and younger players back. Well, seems like Masai Ujiri might be fumbling those negotiations with the Blazers. Basically, a Blazers beat reporter, Eric Brand, is saying that on the Toronto Raptors front, Masai is still asking for everything. And Sharp, a 3rd overall pick for either OG Anunoby or Siakam. The Blazers are out on Toronto. They don't want to deal with Toronto from what I've been told. It's not going to happen. And yes, we love that Masai Ujiri is not going to give our guys up for nothing. I'd hate for us to just give up OG Anunoby for Simons or something, or something minor, right? Pascal for just a pick. We want to get a serious value in return. But if you have the audacity to go to the Portland Trailblazers, and I'm an OG stan, but ask for Simons, there's number 7 pick from last season in Shaedon Sharpe, and the number 3 pick, which is Scoot Henderson likely, or Brandon Miller in this year's NBA draft, and maybe some salary fill. I don't know what else will be in it. You're just ruining the negotiations. No one wants to talk to you at that point if that's your so extreme asking price, right? If I'm coming in trying to, knock a price down or do some, like buy a house, right, that's $1 million or something, I come in with a $200,000 offer, you can't really do that. They're just going to get talked out of the room. You're going to be ignored. You're not going to be taken seriously. And Masai Ujiri, he's done this in the past, right? A couple seasons ago, we could have traded Kyle Lowry for Tyrese Maxey. That was a deal that was on the table during that the Kyle Lowry's final year during the Tampa Tank season, right? But the Toronto Raptors not only wanted Maxey, we also wanted Thibault, who had some value at that point. Apparently, we're also asking for multiple first-round picks. Now, Maxey didn't have the potential or didn't have the value he currently has out there on the open market, but was still a young prospect, was still a guy. And, we were all encouraged by, the Toronto Raptors. We're not going to get got by other teams, right? We're going to get serious value back. We're going to win the trades we make. But if you're trying to finesse every single time you make a deal, you make a trade happen, I know you want to value your guys and all that sort of stuff, but there are some clear holes in this Toronto Raptors team. And if we are not going to negotiate in good faith, if we're going to be making some poor deals, it's just a bad look on this organization. No one's going to want to trade with us. So Masai Ujiri, I'm not saying definitely take a small offer from the Blazers. Don't do this. But if, beat reporters of the other team are coming out and saying, hey, this guy's just impossible to deal with, it's just a bad look, right? No one's going to want to make a trade with the Toronto Raptors, except the San Antonio Spurs, because they always be finessing us. But let me know what you guys think about everything on this front. That reporter also brought up how Dame wasn't that disappointed last season because the Raptors were asking too much for Shaedon Sharpe. I don't know, but we'll see how these negotiations end up playing out. Masai's made some amazing trades in the past, so maybe it's a 4D chess, 5D chess game, and I don't know what's going on. But next thing we're taking a look at is Nick Nurse and Adrian Griffin finalists for the Milwaukee Bucks job. And this one's pretty interesting, as Milwaukee Bucks, like the Toronto Raptors, have been linked to a lot of different potential coaching candidates. And we never really heard something firm. It seemed like every team is interested in getting Nick Nurse on their bench. And there wasn't a lot linking the Milwaukee Bucks to Nick Nurse, except for courtside video I made saying it was going to happen. My prediction, right, a few weeks back. But basically, news came out today, another Woj bomb, indicating the Milwaukee Bucks are narrowing a group of top candidates for the franchise's head coaching search. Nick Nurse, Golden State's assistant Kenny Atkinson, and Toronto's assistant Adrian Griffin. These coaches will be part of the final conversations with the Milwaukee's leadership this week. So, not one, but 2 Toronto Raptors coaches are up, or I guess Nurse isn't a coach right now, but are up for the running for the Milwaukee Bucks head coaching job. And, it's going to be a big blow for the Raptors. We lose Adrian Griffin. I'd like to keep him on as an assistant if we don't make him the head coach or out of the coaching search. But Nick Nurse, as I've said, I know a lot of people sour on him. I know people call him trash, all that sort of stuff. But If he goes down there, he's going to turn that Milwaukee Bucks team into a championship contender, and I don't want to be dealing with them in the Eastern Conference. So that's unfortunate for Raptors fans if he ends up going down there. You're not going to get me to change my mind on that. That's going to be a brutal thing to watch. I'm going to be disgusted to see Nick Nurse either in Milwaukee or Philadelphia if he ends up taking either one of those jobs. So hopefully it doesn't happen, just for Raptors fans' sake. But I don't know, maybe some people want to see Nick Nurse tear down their squad or build a beef with Giannis and force him here. We'll see what ends up on the go with that. But the final thing we're breaking down is the Raptors almost drafted Paul George. And this came out, Paul George, for people who don't know, has a podcast now. It's a really entertaining listen. He had a vid recently with DeMar DeRozan, but basically came out on his pod and said that when I was going through the draft process, I got a promise from the Toronto Raptors that they would draft me with the 13th pick. And I actually remember watching this draft night. I was a young kiddo, and people were saying Paul George, analysts were breaking it down. Paul George has the potential to be the top guy in that draft, and I didn't know much about basketball or anything when I was, 12, 13 years old, however old 2013 was, a decade ago, 13, right? But the analysts are saying, hey, Paul George could be the best player in this draft, even though he's going late in the lottery. It's a risk and stuff. He's the guy I kind of wanted. And unfortunately, the Indiana Pacers ended up selecting him before the Toronto Raptors, even though he was guaranteed to go to Toronto if he was there at that time. And we ended up selecting Ed Davis, who was apparently pegged to go ahead of Paul George in all the mock drafts, ended up slipping to us. And I was pretty hyped. People were comparing him as a lefty to Chris Bosh and all that sort of stuff. Ed Davis didn't end up panning out, but he was a part of that Rudy Gay trade that turned into Graves Vasquez and Patty P, which turned into the greatest era of Toronto Raptors basketball. So it all worked out in the end, but it would have been cool to have playoff P on the squad for the future. But folks, let me know what you guys think about all this Toronto Raptors news. You guys are the best for making this far. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Yes, I'm signing out. Cheers.